Sixth grade, welcome back to the second part of lesson 2. Quick review from the first part of it. We started to take on some of the aspects of the civilization, so we started talking about their government, the pharaoh, who they gave absolute loyalty and respect to because they viewed him as the son of the sun god Ra or Re. Then we started to look at their religion a little bit, their belief in the afterlife, their polytheistic belief in many different gods, and how their gods, helped with the Nile and the floods and things like that, and then preparing their bodies for that afterlife with the embalming process and mummies. Today we're going to pick up right where we left off. We have these mummies, and then we're going to start the custom of putting them into the pyramids. And so those of you who are following along in your book, you would be on page 113. Those of you online here, you can see obviously we're starting right in the middle of this stuff. Okay, notes are ready to rock and roll. Let's do it. The Egyptians honored their pharaoh in a special way. They built great tombs called pyramids for the pharaohs. These enormous structures were made of stone and covered the area of several city blocks. Centuries after they were built, these monuments still tower over the desert sands. The pyramids protected the bodies of the dead pharaohs from floods, wild animals, and robbers. The Egyptians believed the pharaohs would be happy after death if they had their personal belongings. For that reason, they placed the pharaoh's clothing, weapons, furniture, and jewelry into the pyramids. Okay, guys, so you got the challenge that goes along with that. They're putting all these things into the pyramids, and their goal was to protect them. One of the things they need to be protected from is robbers. So they tried to seal the passageways in. The rumors you have of curses being put on those, guys, that's what the Egyptians believe. Now, the Egyptians pretty much did a decent job of having respect for that, but obviously in centuries since then, they did not. So a lot of that was then taken out of those tombs. Okay. The pyramids preserved or saved these objects in relatively good condition for centuries. Today, archaeologists are able to study the pyramids and the treasures they hold to learn about life in ancient Egypt. So you got your second blank filled in here, guys, the treasures that they hold. So archaeologists today are looking at those things. Okay, from your book, you can see this picture of the Sphinx. And if you click on this, it pops up some more pictures that you could scroll through if you wanted to. So you have the pictures of the Great Pyramids that are in your book as well, but then it gives you a few more details as far as going through these passageways to get into those things. Were supposed to be kind of like hidden tunnels. I don't know if you'd call them hidden tunnels, guys, but you got to appreciate it. It's not like you just had a door entrance into the pyramid and you walked right in. There was these long passageways that would obviously in ancient times be dark because you don't have lights. And yes, you could take torches in there, guys, but you got to understand torch smoke would instantly fill that up and use up the oxygen in there, okay? So then inside these bigger rooms where we place the body is today their drawings that we learn a lot, and then you can see all the hieroglyphics on the wall. So this is where we've learned a lot about the ancient Egyptians from these pyramids and these temples that we've discovered. All right, let's figure out how they were built. Thousands of workers spent hard labor to build the pyramids. Farmers did much of the work during the summer months when the Nile River flooded and they could not farm. Surveyors, engineers, carpenters, and stone cutters also helped to build the pyramids. The first great engineer, number 3 in your notes, who built pyramids was Ahimotep. He also served as an official for the pharaoh. So this guy's job was to build the first pyramid in honor of the pharaoh. Workers searched for stone in places throughout the Nile River Valley or in Upper Egypt. After locating the stone, skilled artisans used copper tools to cut the stone into huge blocks. Next, workers used ropes to fasten the blocks onto wood sleds. The sleds were pulled along a path made of logs to the Nile River. There, the stones were moved onto barges that carried them to the building site. Workers unloaded the blocks and dragged or pushed them up ramps to be set in place at each new level of the pyramid. So, guys, just please appreciate these huge rocks. We're going to start to talk about the impressiveness of the Egyptians to build these huge pyramids get the stone, drag the stone, load it onto boats. First of all, build a boat that can hold these huge heavy stones, float it down the river, drag it down, and then obviously as we're going along, guys, okay, drag the first stones into place, but now you're going to start dragging up. Think how high that is and the ramps that have to be built, because you can't just drag a stone straight up vertical, so you'd have to build a ramp coming way out the side or wrapping around and slowly work your way up. Imhotep was a genius to build and design all this stuff. The Egyptians faced many challenges as they built the pyramids. These challenges, however, led to important discoveries. For example, each pyramid rested on a square-shaped foundation with an entrance facing north. To find north, the Egyptians studied the skies and developed an understanding of astronomy. With this knowledge, they invented a 35-day calendar with 12 months divided into 3 seasons. This calendar became the basis of our modern calendar. Okay, so a few notes. Number 4, the workers unloaded blocks and dragged those things to where they needed. Number 5, they invented the calendar, which is the basis of our modern calendar. So you can see the Egyptians, 365 days and 12 months. That's very good. Obviously, we follow along and use those things to get what they want. So as we try to design this thing, we invent a ton of other things that are used today. And that's true with all kinds of things, guys. A lot of inventions that we take for granted literally came out of a different purpose. So when we were studying space travel is when we figured out microwave ovens and different products and things that we would use to be able to do those things. Egyptians also made advancements in mathematics. Egypt's pyramid builders had to calculate how much stone was needed to build a pyramid. They had to measure angles in order to construct a pyramid's walls. To do this, they invented a system of written numbers based on 10, just like ours. Remember, Mesopotamians were based on 60. They also created fractions, number 6, using them with whole numbers to add, subtract, and divide. So you can see how detailed they got, guys, that they said we got to divide whole numbers and make them into fractions. About the mid-2000s, the Egyptians built the biggest and grandest of the pyramids, which is called the Great Pyramid. Now you're cruising along here. Number 7, the Great Pyramid. It lies about 10 miles from the modern city of Cairo. That is the capital of Egypt today. Built for King Khufu, the Great Pyramid is one of 3 pyramids still standing at Giza on the Nile's west bank. It is about the height of a 48-story building towering nearly 500 feet above the desert. It extends over the area of about 9 football fields. More than 2 million blocks are used to build this pyramid, and each one weighs about 2.5 tons. So guys, that's 5,000 pounds times 2 million of those. For more than 4,000 years, the Great Pyramid stood as the tallest structure in the world. Now, today we're obviously bigger, but isn't that amazing? They built this thing in for over 4,000 years. That was the tallest structure ever built by man. Okay, so that's all the positives, guys. We usually look at the pyramids as a really cool thing. The negative side of this is you can imagine how much workers and how much resources. I once read that they think it took 100,000 Egyptians 20 years to build a pyramid. Okay, that's a lot of workers building a tomb for one guy, isn't it? And so for all the Egyptians that say this is super cool, we're honoring our pharaoh, or for people like me that's like, that's so awesome they built that, a lot of people would say that's a waste because we could have built city walls to protect us. We could have used 100,000 workers to build better irrigation systems, better trade routes, better homes, better, you list what could have been done instead of building a really big rock pyramid for one guy. But that was their culture, guys, and so you just look at that and then decide the same thing. And we're going to study civilizations. A lot of civilizations are going to spend money to build something that's outstanding, shows their power, but can also be a negative thing, waste of product. At its peak, ancient Egypt was home to about 5 million people, number 8. This would be equal to the number of people today that live in the state of Colorado. So, powerful empire, not that many people, guys, when you think about that. We have more in one state, obviously. Most ancient Egyptians lived in the fertile Nile Valley and Delta. The Delta is found at the mouth of the river. These two areas, which make up only 3% of Egypt's lands, are densely populated even today. So what they're getting at is 3% of the land and almost 100% of the people live on that little bit of land that they rule. The roles of people in ancient Egypt reflected their social status, or what we call their position in society. So we use social status today, guys. It's number 9. The king or pharaoh and his family held the highest social position in Egypt, followed by a smaller upper class of army commanders, nobles, and priests. Hang on, I'll scroll up so you can see the picture on this. So here's their social classes they're talking about, guys. Now you can see the paragraph gives you a little bit more details on your notes. I kind of just went with this. You have Pharaoh's family, then you have priests and nobles, then you have traders and artisans, then you have farmers and herders, and on the bottom you have unskilled workers. Now as we read the paragraph, guys, you're going to see that they only put this into 4 categories. They put D and E together, but they also add a few more details to it. Okay, so we were here. You had the king and the pharaoh and his family held the spot. Then underneath them, a small group of army commanders, nobles, and priests. So powerful in the government, powerful in the army, powerful in religion. Priests served as government officials, supervised people who worked as clerks and scribes. A larger group of traders, artisans, and scribes made up this middle class. The lowest but also the largest group in Egypt's society was made up of farmers and unskilled workers. So in their paragraph, they put these two things together. In this pyramid, you can see this is just showing you that they separated it out. Even though there were divisions in Egypt class structure, ambitious people in lower classes were able to improve their social position. So what they're saying, guys, is you're not stuck here. We'll talk about societies that says you're born here, you stay here. Egypt said if you were ambitious, you had a dream, and you worked at it, you could bounce your way up. A great example of that, guys, would have been Joseph. Down here, an enslaved person obviously gets bumped all the way up to second in command right behind Pharaoh, okay? Egypt's upper class lived in elegant, number 10 is that, on the estates along the Nile River. Their homes were constructed of wood and sun-dried mud bricks. Some were 2 or 3 stories tall. Surrounding their homes were lush gardens and pools filled with fish and water lilies. Men and women from the upper class dressed in fashionable white linen clothes and wore dark eye makeup and jewelry. Servants waited on them and then performed the household tasks. So life was good at the top. They dressed different. Everything about it's different. Guys, that's true of so many civilizations. It's definitely true of our civilization. You think about America. Do the wealthy in America live in really big houses? Yes. Do the wealthy in America have people doing their chores for them? Yes. Can the wealthy in America dress a little bit different than the rest of us? You bet. You think about Hollywood, and every time there's an award ceremony, how they walk down the red carpet and take all these pictures done by designers who make this dress for one person, okay? So definitely different. The middle class in ancient Egypt society was made up of people who owned businesses and held skilled jobs. These jobs included trading and working as a scribe. Artisans were also important members of the middle class. These craft makers produced linen cloth, jewelry, pottery, and metal goods. The middle class lived in smaller homes and dressed more simply than the upper class. Number 11, you're dressing more simply. In other words, by what you wear, I can tell what class you belong to. The largest Egyptian social class included farmers, unskilled workers, and enslaved people. Most farmers worked on land that was owned by wealthy nobles. They paid rent to the landowner, usually with a portion of their crops. Farmers lived in houses that were made of mud brick. The houses generally had only one room, so that would be fill in your blank down here, number 12, only one room. And the roof made of palm leaves. Farmers ate a simple diet of bread, vegetables, and fruit. Unskilled workers performed manual labor, such as unloading the cargo from boats and transporting to markets. Some were fishers. Most unskilled workers settled in crowded, number 13, crowded city neighborhoods. They lived in small mud-bricked houses with hard-packed dirt floors. Their houses sometimes included a courtyard. Families often gathered on the flat rooftops to socialize, play games, sleep. Because of the hot Egyptian climate, they also did their cooking on the rooftop to keep the heat out. This helped their home stay cooler. So guys, not much has changed, has it? Wealthy, really big houses, middle class, smaller houses, lower class, crowded together city neighborhoods. We see that happen all the time. Some of these unskilled workers were enslaved people. Many of them had been captured in war, and they could earn their freedom over time. So you got number 14, they could earn their freedom over time. Some of these enslaved people helped build the pyramids. The Israelites did not build the pyramids, guys, okay? That's just something, the timeline doesn't match up with that. But it's an important thing with their culture here, guys, as we keep talking that theme of a culture unique. Hey, losing a battle made you a slave. That's reality in ancient times. But Egypt said, hey, if we want these slaves not to hate us, we're going to allow them to earn their freedom. And so a lot of people, guys, would lose the battle, live in Egypt, appreciate Egypt, constant source of food, work really hard, and then boom, eventually become an Egyptian citizen over time. Okay. The family, number 15, was the most important group in ancient Egyptian society. Even the gods and goddesses were arranged in family groupings. The father was the head of the family in ancient Egypt, but women had more rights than women in other early civilizations had. Egyptian women held a legal status similar to that of men. They could own property, buy and sell goods, and obtain divorces. So one of the first civilizations we're going to talk about, guys, where women and men were pretty close to equal. We want to stress this, how important family was. It's really important to God. In America, I don't know if we would say family as important as in America as it is in other ancient cultures, guys, and we got to decide if we should try to get that into our culture. I think that's unique to a lot of our own individual families as far as how important. So I'll give you mine, for example. On my mom's side of the family, they get together every year at Christmas and every year at 4th of July. It doesn't matter where you live, you try to make it to that family gathering. On my dad's side of the family, the extended family usually got together once every 10 years to celebrate my grandparents' wedding anniversary. So I remember seeing all my Bauer cousins when my grandparents had their 40th anniversary, and then I didn't see them again until they had their 50th wedding anniversary. So we would go 10 years without seeing family. Now, it doesn't mean that family wasn't important, but it's just we didn't go out of our way to see extended family. Egypt might have been a little bit different. Now, obviously, in America, we travel a lot farther, so those things factor in too, but something to think about. Wealthy women even served as priests. I believe that's number 6. Wives of farmers often worked in the fields with their husbands. Women of the higher social classes were more likely to stay at home with their husbands while their husbands worked at their jobs. Okay, so you think of Potiphar and his wife. They were upper class. Potiphar went to work. Potiphar's wife stayed in the house and tempted Joseph, didn't she? Few Egyptian children attended school. Egyptian children had time for fun, playing with board games, dolls, spinning tops, and stuffed leather balls, things that we have found in the tombs and the drawings. As in many other cultures, Egyptian children were expected to respect their parents. Mothers taught their daughters to sew, cook, and run a household. Boys learned farming and other trades from their fathers. Learning their father's trade was important because very often the oldest son, your number 17, would inherit the father's business. Kind of similar to what we have going today. Lots of times it goes to the firstborn son. When boys and girls became teenagers, they were expected to get married, number 18, and start families of their own. You and I might cringe at that to say they became teenagers and they're talking about getting married already. That seems so young. That was very common in ancient times, guys. We believe Mary was 13 or 14 when she married Joseph and had Jesus. Why? They were young and full of life, and they could live through the birth process, okay? This is the biggest reason you wanted young, strong girls. The older you got, the more often it would end in death for the mom or death for the child. It's sad, but we needed medicine, and we didn't have it back in the days. So when you're still young and strong, they got married. In Egyptian cities and among the upper class, people usually lived in nuclear families. A nuclear family is made up of 2 parents and their children. Okay, so Egypt stressed the nuclear family. Now we're going to move to the other kind. Some farm families and others in the lower class lived as extended families. An extended family includes older adults along with their married children and their families live together. For farm families, this would just give you more workers in the field. Okay, so extended families, your aunts and uncles and cousins. Now what Egypt said is, hey, the wealthy, when you get married, you start your own house. Farmers or poor people that couldn't afford it said we need to pack more in there. Guys, it's a cultural thing. You can see that in America, both sides of this. Some nuclear families happens a lot, and some extended families happen a lot depending on your situations in life and all kinds of things. So I'm not saying one is right or one is wrong. You just see how Egypt has it, and then you compare it to what we have and think about it. The oldest son and sometimes the oldest daughter were also responsible for taking care of their parents. when the parents became too old or sick to take care of themselves. This responsibility included making sure the parents were given a proper burial after they died. So you got to step back and appreciate that fact, guys, of number one, as they get too old, I'm going to feed and take care of them until they pass away. And then when they pass away, I'm going to make sure they have a proper burial, which means mummifying their body and placing it in a tomb so that they have the afterlife. That would be a decent expense, guys. And so the children were expected to do that as also part of their culture. Ancient civilizations, that's very common today, guys. As people get older, we look to our government to take care of the elderly people. That's Medicaid and Medicare and things like that. In ancient civilizations, you obviously didn't have any of that stuff, so the family took care of them. All right, done with lesson 2 for the day. You got the worksheet that goes along with it as we learn to appreciate the Egyptian civilization.